Prototyping. Prepared for and presented at the 2016 Square One Entrepreneurship Training Program. Square One is a program of the Center for Emerging Technologies. CET is an affiliate of the Cortex Innovation Community. Square One is funded in part by the Missouri Technology Corporation.
I thought through, what could I really bring that's insightful from my experience, and I thought absolutely nothing. So what I've got is a few bullet points that I think are important in the prototyping process. I really do feel that prototyping and product development is a process. So I got some bullet points from that, but really just stories. So some examples. I timed it out probably about 20 minutes. It'll probably be shorter than that because I like to talk really fast. But I'm also really passionate about this. So as both Chrissy and Mark can attest to, 20 minutes for me might be 45 minutes. I don't know. So we'll get started. A little bit about me. As was said, I'm currently the GM down at Tech Shop. If you don't know what Tech Shop is, quick shameless plug, we're a do-it-yourself prototype and fabrication studio. Some people refer to it as a makerspace. So basically we've got tools for you to come in and make whatever it is that you're making physically. Before that, I spent 3 years running a cut and sew manufacturing shop where our specialty was really short batch manufacturing, which means prototypes, as well as sporting goods equipment. And then before that, I spent 8 years with a local aerospace and defense company as director of new product development, where we made everything from oxygen control regulators and valves to portable breathing equipment to the throttles and grips for the F-35, the F-18, the F-22. Yeah, basically if it flies, we have some part on it, or they have some part on it now. I still consider myself there. So that's me. Real quick, my fundamental beliefs. Cash is king. When you're developing a product or you're starting a business, whatever, cash is king. Whatever it takes to keep that cash in the bank account and not paying someone else, that's probably a good idea. I've been in multiple organizations now that, oh, we'll just go ahead and buy that. We'll just go ahead and buy that. We'll just go ahead and buy that. Then all of a sudden, you don't have any money left to make that. So cash is king is a big one for me. I use it in almost all my presentations. So start there. Secondly is 3 kinds of service. Good, cheap, or fast. You can have 2, but you can't have 3. It can be good and cheap, but it won't be fast. So you can have it good and fast, but it won't be cheap. So if you haven't learned this already, you will shortly, especially in the prototyping world. So the way I broke this down, prototyping, if you're not to that phase yet, we'll talk a little bit about that. So why is prototyping important? And just so you know, big secret, it's very important, okay? And then second is I'll use some examples on doing it effectively. And then third, very short, because I know that I am very biased on tools and resources. So just because, well, I run probably the best resource, right? So it will be just a real quick 1-page slide. And I really hope that what this does is just get some juices flowing and some questions generated, all right? Questions thus far? All right. All right, so reason 1 on why it's important is it's 1,000,000 words. A prototype truly is 1,000,000 words. If a picture paints 1,000 words, a prototype paints 1,000,000 words, all right? So this is a description here right off of Wikipedia. Great resource as long as you're not citing it for academia. A device that combines features of a personal computer operating system with other features useful for mobile or handheld device. Anybody know what that is? I guarantee you all have one. It's a smartphone, right? So now it's pretty common to see that type of description, but imagine, how many years ago? 10? Has it been more than 10 years ago, where smartphones didn't exist? Just the old, 9-digit cell phones, and trying to explain that to a board of investors or various people, right? That's hard without a prototype. This one here is more personal. I highly doubt anyone will get this. So a high pressure tank, about 150 to 300 atmospheres, a pressure regulator, and an inhalation connection, mouthpiece, mouth mask, or face mask, connected together and mounted to a carrying frame. We have any firefighters in here? So this is where we get into my personal experience, right? So this is an SCBA. All right, so this is the device that firefighters use to actually go into a burning building, use to rescue or evacuate remaining persons. This is also an SCBA, right? So I'm a little personal to this one here. I worked on this one for 8 years. So they're the exact same thing, described the exact same way. So that's why prototyping is important, right? People have misconceptions and they have perceptions of ideas, and they've got just all sorts of things running through our normal day-to-day basis. And especially if you're doing something that's never been done before, they're going to have problems understanding the picture that's in your mind, okay? So that's why prototyping is important. I used to have a rule when I was a director at Essex. We don't have a single meeting without a prototype. I don't care how ugly the prototype is. We've had plenty of silly putty prototypes, but you have to have a prototype to explain to whoever you're talking to, whether it's the CEO, whether it's an investor, whether it's a customer, all right, what it is that you're truly trying to get out of it. So that's why it's important, number one. It's a million words, summed up. The known unknowns. Can anyone even see this? This is kind of a busy slide, right? So this, Mary, I apologize. This is going a little into product development or project management. So I just love this comic strip. I was just Googling stuff the other night, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Again, going back to what is it that you're actually doing? So this is how the customer explained it to you, right? This is how the project manager did it. That's not going to work at all, right? This is how the engineer designed it. I'm an engineer, so I know exactly that's possible. That will happen. I saw it in CAD, right? CAD said it can do it. I can do that. How the programmer wrote it, how the sales executive described it, right? Anybody have a, right? This is perfect, right? It's the most luxurious swing you've ever had. This is documentation, right? So this is how we made sure that we got everything right on this one. This is my favorite, right? Especially for someone who's billed customers, right? This is how you bill the customers, all right? This thing was gorgeous. But in reality, this is all you really wanted, right? That's it. So all these processes, you don't know. So it's the known unknowns. Until you start doing it, you don't know. This is all over LinkedIn right now, right? And this is my absolute favorite on LinkedIn right now. Because user experience is a real thing, believe it or not. And no matter how wonderful your idea is or how great your design is, not knowing how the user is going to do it, that's kind of a big deal, all right? And so I've seen this well over 90% of projects I've worked on, that you bring in a prototype into a customer meeting or in with the executive. My favorite is when the executive picks it up and he doesn't know how it works, right? So that's rough. But they pick it up and they can't figure it out. If they can't figure it out, all right, then you need to make it simpler, right? It's the known unknowns. And I am stealing that from one of my professors from WashU, so just to clarify that, make sure that I don't get hit on any copyright. That's a big part of product development. Yeah, I can't think of a good example because literally every project I've ever worked on has been exactly this. What you thought someone said, what you thought was in your mind, how you thought things would go together. Hey, that three-quarter inch chamfer, that don't work there. So it's very important. And the last thing, as far as why it's important, speed to market, right? So what I say, cash is king, revenue generation, right? The sooner you make something, the sooner you know all those unknowns. The sooner you prototype something, and prototypes don't have to be sexy, right? There's alpha, there's beta, there's Charlie, there's delta. We've got a whole alphabet that we could do prototypes of, right? And I see it on a regular basis. So many people are like, oh, I gotta wait till I get it just right. No, just do it, right? That's the hard part, is people want to wait and sit on it and wait and sit on it, wait and sit on it, wait and sit on it. And it slows you down, slows the process down, slows the creative process down. So speed to market is the other reason you prototype. So you learn so much through prototyping. All right, do it effectively. How much time do I have, out of curiosity? I know I've got plenty of time, because after here, we start flying.
You have plenty of time.
All right, cool. All right. Oh, perfect. Think of your questions, because we're going to have a lot of time at the end. All right. So how do you do it effectively, right? Define your product, fail. If you haven't seen any prototyping or product development or anything, then even entrepreneurial books, right? It's all about failing. Push your limits and just do it. That's the big thing. So starting off, define your product. So this is an example of a battlefield oxygen sustainment system, the BOSS system, designed for the U.S. Army. So define your product. This is both a success and a failure on many levels. It's a success because when we originally started looking at this project, we started here, right? So what this is this is a oxygen distribution system for, Hi-Ho paratroopers. Okay, so high altitude jumps. So they need to be on oxygen when they're jumping out of the plane way up there. So they needed a system that can actually, A, supply oxygen to the jumper, but B, when they landed behind enemy lines, they can treat patients in the battlefield with oxygen. So we started here, all right, and then we realized, as we started defining the scope of the project, so what about the oxygen on the way up? We thought about it going down. What about on the way up? So all of a sudden, the scope of the project became this. Hey, you need oxygen while you go up also, and you need oxygen while you come down, and you need enough oxygen for the patient. Okay, great. So now we've got this. Let's continue defining what it is that we've got, and then we realized, how are we going to fill these things? These are liquid oxygen systems, so they're cryogenic, which cryogenic for oxygen is minus 473 degrees Fahrenheit. So you got to keep it really cold. That's hard to do when it's 70 degrees outside. All right, so that led to this. And that is still is Essex's oxygen generating system. Okay, so basically as they continued down this path, and so just to let you know, this took several years of iteration to get to this point, all right? But they didn't realize it until they brought this to market, okay? So they didn't realize it until they started seeing how the users were actually using it and how they were interfacing with it, okay? So we started here and we moved, and there's a full system of it now. Honestly, it's been 3 years since I've been with Essex. I don't know where this stands. Last I heard, they still service them. I don't know if they still manufacture them. Questions? So this is so kind of concluding back on defining your product, right? So as you define your product, what does it actually do? That's where you're going to start seeing all these iterations. One of the other big gotchas, so I said this was both a success and a failure, is defining. So again, after they went to market with this one here, they realized that, hey, this has to work upside down. Okay?
Did they talk to any customer?
So here's the funny part. The customer wrote the spec. The customer wrote the spec, right? So, oops. Yeah, so it's got to work upside down. So a cryogenic system.
I was just going to say that the lesson there that I'm hearing from you, going back to the tree slide with the swings on it, you know, I mean, even when the customer writes the spec, the customer is trying to think through, you know, who knows what the circumstances they write the spec are, you know? I mean, it could be, here, throw the spec together, so half hour later, boom, you've got a spec. Or it could be something they've added to iteratively over the course of time that's really extensive. You know, who knows what the influence is there? Who knows if they went and talked to their end users when they wrote the spec? You know, and even if they did things absolutely perfectly. Murphy's Law says there's something that's going to fall through the cracks.
Yep.
So whether you're talking about a spec that's written by the customer, the spec that's written by or in conjunction with the producer, you know, the reality is you've got a lot of work you got to do getting the product and the prototype in front of people to make sure that you, like I said, take as many of those unknowns out of the equation.
So that's the second part, is you're going to fail.
Let me ask you a question. How do you think about the number of iterations you need? So we're in the prototype place. We picked our designer, which is Objects, who presented here last week. Manufacturer yet to be determined. We already picked our tester.
Yeah.
How do you know when you finally found the secret sauce? Because we know you'll get improvement, right? But how do you know, gee, that's the best we can do, or that's good enough? Do you need to predefine that, or how do you think about that?
So the more you can define it, absolutely, right? Think through all the different iterations, real options, stage gate. You know, there's several different design thinking elements that you can use. But as Mark said, you're always going to get it wrong. All right, and that's where I like the Lean Startup. Have you read that yet? So the Lean Startup is, it's perfect. It's spot on, right? Get it to market as quickly as possible because guess what? You're going to pivot. All right, and you need to be ready to pivot when that happens. And whether that's pivot in the manner of this is how the customer uses it, or this is how it's manufactured, or some level. And that's really what I'm trying to drive here with the prototyping is you have to get something into people's hands because you're never going to understand fully how they're going to use it. Or how, like for instance, cell phones, right? My 20-month-old drops my cell phone. I've had a cell phone since I was 16. Never once cracked a screen, never once, but all of a sudden I put it in my 20-month-old hand, and this thing is thrown across the room like crazy. Right? I would have never thought that as a user of a cell phone who's never had any issues, all of a sudden I bring in an external factor that's using it differently.
What is the Lean Startup?
Lean.
Oh,
Lean. Yeah, the Lean Startup.
the book.
Yep.
I mean, you know, with DM was some of that too, you know, getting, you know, minimum viable product in the consumer goods line is probably going to be more important because you're not just taking the same product into a bunch of coders and saying, hey, tweak the code. I mean, you've actually got to reassemble teams and you've got to redo production. You've got to do things that cost a lot of money. So eliminating maybe more variables in the process to get into that minimum viable product in the consumer goods environment. I don't know, Mary's going to talk a little bit, you know, on the product management side about that. But
Yeah,
I would say in your line, in your product line, that's probably more important. You know, so the thing that I would want to do, you know, there are two things. You know, the large company versus small company. Large company, like if it was Colgate-Palmolive or Eveready, you just segment a portion of the market as big as Fresno, and you do an in-market test. You know, and you'd see if something's sold in a beta version. You know, that's really expensive, and as a startup, you're probably not going to gain access to the entire city of Fresno or anything like it, so size. So, you know, as much as I hate to say it, you know, a lot of this is gonna come down to the experience of your team members.
Yeah, so that's where this is important. Define as much as you possibly can, but know that there's going to be a pivot point. And it may be major, it may be minor, but it's going to happen. So you're going to fail. This is my favorite failure because I spent 4 years and a couple $1 million doing it. So someone else's money. So this is an emergency escape breathing device for the U.S. Navy. This is what the U.S. Navy uses currently. Used prior to my design implementation, and they actually are on the second iteration of this company's product. So this is another one of those that we had an end customer set parameters of design and suggestions of design. We designed to it, and a year into it, they decided to change that. So that's kind of, that happens, right? But with the fail part is it didn't fail. That's not the part that failed, right? Because that's just scope creep, and that happens on several projects. But when the 3,000 PSI oxygen bottle went boom, that's a failure. And because we had tested over 200 products at that time with 0 incidents, and then all of a sudden we're showing it to BNSF, and on someone's thigh or hip, it goes boom. 3,000 PSI escaping through a hole, itty bitty hole, pinhole, really fast is really loud. But what we learned from this, we were about 6 months pre-launch at that presentation when that happened. What we learned is that just a dab of lubricant on our actuating spring goes a very long way. No way we could have defined that. No way. And the dynamic force that we used in the actuator and the calculations was just wrong. Okay. We did it at a sales presentation. Imagine if we had 3,000 PSI oxygen blow up in an actual fire or event. That would have been it. That would have been done. But because we did have prototypes, we had several iterations, like I said, 200 units we had fired off before we even got to this point. Basically saved a $40 million contract at that point in time. And because we were able to go back to the customer, we were able to do a failure analysis and say, this is why it happened. It took a while to get to why it happened because it's just so odd. Think back to NASA, right? Which Apollo was it? Not 11. Was it 13? One of the Apollo missions. It was they did the night before. They found out that they had a potential incident with one O-ring in the Challenger program. Yes, that's it. So they ran an FMEA the night before, and there was something like a 26% chance. It was really low that there would be no issues, right? So they used that calculation to say, yeah, we're good. We'll go ahead and launch tomorrow, right? Oops, right? That's a big oops. We talk about it today. That's in any of my design, programming, FMEA, FEA analysis. That's the example they use because it's such a great example, right? Mathematically, we could be okay, right? By the numbers, it should work, right? No. It's Murphy's Law, like Mark said. If something can go wrong, your customers will be the ones to find out that something will go wrong. So the sooner you get it in their hands to play with it, focus group with it, the better off you are. Push your limits. I'm not gonna. So this is one. This is a product. So I talked about cheap, fast, and good, right? Just because that's true doesn't mean you can't push the limits of it, right? Just because a manufacturer says, well, there's a minimum order quantity of 2,000, okay, start shopping elsewhere, right? Push the limits to it. Find out what you can't find cheaper, what you can't do faster, what you can't do better quality. I use this example. This is the Last Chance Rescue Filter product, another product I launched for the Respiratory Protection Division. This product was developed in 65 days and tested. Can I watch this? Nope. Nah, that's all right. It was going to be one of those if you got time things. All right. So it was actually tested in a live fire, Yale University up in Connecticut. 65 days of development work is what went into this. We had about half of the product was complete on injection mold. The rest we had to machine by hand. We had 15 users in Connecticut that actually used the device in a live fire. And we're talking IDLH, which IDLH is immediately dangerous to life and health conditions. If this bad boy failed at that point in time, yeah, okay, not a bad day at the office, okay. Fortunately, we had all success, but again, we had 65 days to prototype and test, and prototype and test, and prototype and test, and prototype and test. We went through 6 iterations of prototypes before we went into the live testing. We tested different glues, we tested different adhesives, we tested different carrying devices, different tear open methods, and the whole reason we were able to do that is I actually partnered with a good friend of mine who had been through this similar type of device once before, and he was able to help get over those roadblocks, and we were able to do it faster, right? So tap into knowledge, push the limits, because there's probably someone out there who may or may not have done similar things to what you're trying to achieve, and a lot of us are kind of just happy sharing that knowledge, right? So that's what happened here. Push the limits. All right, if someone tells you something that you don't like, doesn't mean you're stuck with it, right? Break through it. Keep going, keep making. That's the big one. Last one, just do it, right? I love this quote, Babe Ruth. Never let the fear of striking out get in your way. So I'm going to use this to really start my career. So this is Baitcast fishing reel. So one thing I didn't go back far enough for you guys to hear this about my bio. My degree is not engineering. My degree is actually physics. People used to ask me, well, what are you going to do with a physics degree? The only reply I could legitimately come up with is hang it on the wall. Because physics just, unless you go back for your PhD, there's not much you can do with it. I was very fortunate that I was moonlighting at Spirit St. Louis Airport, changing oil out of rich people's aircraft. And one of those persons said, hey, I hear you're studying physics. I said, yeah, I am. He goes, you ever thought about engineering? I'm like, no, engineers are below physicists. And he said, why don't you come listen, check out what I've got. And that's where I started. So I actually started on this fishing reel, right? Something that was beneath me put me on this path to where I am today, right? You don't know what the next prototype you have, or you do, has in store for you. You don't know where that pivot point is going to happen, all right? So just doing it and making it is going to clear up a whole lot of unknowns to help you define that path. I know that's a long stretch, but I just want to tell that story. So, yeah, so I started off doing fishing reels, then I did life-saving devices, and now I'm at Tech Shop where I help other people.
Is that fishing rod with the cage?
No. No, F, so, yeah. So it's actual fishing, so. Oh, physics, yes, with a PH, yeah. Yeah, I have a degree in physics. So it's only a bachelor's. All right, so tools and resources, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. Hopefully I left plenty of time for that. So tools and resources. In my mind, so there's probably should be a fourth on here, right? Rapid prototyping. Yeah, they're out there. You got to do some search for them nowadays. A lot of the 3D printing companies have swallowed them up, but they're still out there. Protomold is one that I've had great success with. But again, you'll get it fast, you won't get it cheap. All right. Existing infrastructures, right? Find a local manufacturer. This is one that I've worked a lot more the last few years with because manufacturers, especially this day and age, they have excess capacity. Whether they will tell it to your face or not, all right, they have excess capacity. All right, so if you don't get the right answer, keep looking because there are manufacturers out there with excess capacity that are looking for that next idea to help you out, right? And they may not give you that small batch quantity. Again, it may not be cheap, but you're gonna have higher quality. And they're gonna help you find those pivot points earlier because they've most likely been through it, right? Hey, you can't cut this like this. You can't stitch this like this, right? They're going to have seen that. So there's existing infrastructure out there. The other is my favorite, well, one before that is you can just acquire the capital yourself, right? If you come from means and you have the money, yeah, go ahead, acquire the capital. But I've never done that. I've never acquired capital for any project or prototype that I've ever done. The very last is Maker Studios, so Tech Shop, right? We're right down the road. It's, here we go, shameless plug. This is why I didn't want to spend too much time on this. $150 a month, right? To access to a lot of equipment to do your prototype. You're not going to get a minimum order quantity for that. You're not going to get initial prototype from Protomold for that. Are there other costs associated with the membership? Yeah, absolutely. But again, it's a long cry away from another manufacturer. So if you have any inclination of doing it yourself, there is opportunity to do that. So.
What kind of help, if you go up there and try to work on something, how do you get help from somebody up there?
You ask. So we've got, we do have what's called Dream Consultants on staff. And our dream consultants range in experience. We've got artists who excel in metals. We've got people who've ran design modeling studios for 8 years. To myself, I can, believe it or not, I can turn on a piece of equipment every now and then. They try to keep me off, but I do it. And so ask now if you need actual, hey, you make this for me, we're $95 an hour. So and that's because we really don't like to do that. We'd much rather empower you to do it.
It's really worthwhile because it's a 20-minute tour. I've been there twice. And
Yeah.
I can't remember our colleague in the front row here, but she was there. She's a tech shop artisan, right?
Yep, artist in residence.
Artist in textile. It's amazing. I mean, it's just cool just to go there. I mean, all the different stuff they can do. They take you through it. They're very knowledgeable. They have all sorts of classes, right?
Yeah, so you can't get on any piece of equipment until you take a class. So we're going to teach, again, it's about teaching and educating, right? We want to empower you guys to do the prototyping. We want to help you. When I was interviewed for this position, they said, why are you even interested in this? I said, to give back. And they said, how can someone your age actually say that? And maybe it was BS on my part, but really, I think it is, right? Because that's we've had in the 10 weeks we've been open, we've had so many incredible stories already come out of there, right? And are there days that are, yeah, they're drags, but to see two young couples make $2,500 every weekend making keychains, like, that's cool. Right? To see corporations here in St. Louis prototyping their next displays for point of use at local foot stores or stores. Yeah, that's cool. So, yeah, for me, it really is. It's giving back, and it's all of my staff is the same way. We didn't take the position to become millionaires. Any other questions?
You just resolved my problem.
Huh?
When you said that prototyping, because I've been thinking for a while what it is that I need to display my product.
Yep.
And for the longest time, I haven't been able to figure out, and I've been to quite a few shows, and I walk around looking at what other people have, but I never really liked it.
Mhm.
But my husband's an engineer. I think you probably work in the same field. And so I always try to give him ideas, like, what about this? But I'm gonna send them because I think he probably will like your studio.
Yeah, absolutely. You know,
Maybe he can create something
yeah.
for me.
We, especially as engineers, and I lived this for 8 years, right? We get stuck behind our CAD computers, right? And if it, look, the 3D system said that it worked, right? SolidWorks says it's great, and it's going to be the next big thing. Yeah, okay. Did SolidWorks calculate that dynamic force that just happened on there? Boom, no, right? So, yeah, it's important. Prototyping really is important to help you overcome those failures because fail early, fail often for a better result, right? David Kelly, IDEO, best design firm ever. Yeah, that's where it's at, and you have to just do it.
So I really appreciate the just do it and
Yeah.
get your product in front of consumers and stuff as early as possible. But then you've also presented some examples where you couldn't have gone to market with that product
Yeah.
because it failed in a situation where you wouldn't have wanted it to be at market at that point. So do you have any tips for gauging at what point you need what kind of audience to present your prototype to?
That I don't. Focus groups are super powerful for that. So if you look at the ISO standards, so quality management for the International Standards Organization, quality management, ISO 9001, it's a very regimented test scenario. You can follow that and get a lot of the way there, and that's kind of defining the knowns. If you follow some level of quality management system, it's going to help you define all of that. It's going to help you test all that. We did, with the respiratory protection devices, we did a lot of human subject testing. And when you put one of those SCBAs on a big guy like me, you're going to test the limits of it. Sorry, I can suck down a 45-minute bottle in 5 minutes, all right? And that ain't no joke. So that's, you just, yeah, it's hard to say, especially on the kind of the consumer side. Focus groups work great. Start small, right? That's why Etsy and Amazon and all those marketplaces are so popular because they allow you to start small and still pivot, right? You're not necessarily stuck with what you put there.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You said to get a prototype as quick as you can, no matter what it looks like, and take some money, but
Yeah.
I mean, if it looks disastrous.
Don't show it to your end customer. Show it to someone else, right? I'm willing to test products on a daily basis. Come on. Like, that's, how many friends and family do you have that are interested in, why in the world are you in the garage at 2 o'clock in the morning pounding, making all this noise, right? I'm sure your neighbor next door would like to know what's going on. Give it to him, let him test it.
So what do you suggest to people, say, that come through Tech Shop? For example, like the product that we have, whereas the prototyping, getting to that phase wasn't a big deal. It's actually now at this point, our prototype isn't the actual thing that can go to market.
Okay.
It actually will require the process of buying a tool
Yep.
that has to make that plastic product. So what advice do you give to people that come in and say, great, I have this prototype,
Yep.
now, basically now what?
A lot of the similar stuff, right? So define exactly what you want to get out of that. So tooling's a tough one, right? Because you can get a really good tool and drop $100,000 on it, right? Without batting an eye. But at the same time, you can send it to China and you can wait, 6 months and you can get it for a quarter of the cost. But then when it arrives, 99% of the time, it's wrong the first time. So really, what is it that you need? Do you need something really fast? Do you need something really cheap? So again, define where your trade-offs are at and what you're willing to accept. If you can do, so if you made the prototype once, I bet you could do it again, right? And again, and again, and again, and every time you come off, so there's this learning curve in manufacturing, right? So every time that you do another iteration, you learn a little bit more, and you become a little more efficient, you become a little more efficient, you become a little more efficient. This is why when PlayStation comes out, it's $500, and then 2 years later, it's only $200, right? It's because they know what their learning curve is on making this. And you can actually research learning curves on any manufacturing process, whether it's cut and sew, whether it's filling tubes, whether it's machining, they exist. So you can maybe price accordingly and know where you can be and just start small. Again, though, it depends on, like, if you're wanting to be, you know, I want to be Tesla by the end of next year, right? That's going to take a lot more money.
I had a comment that I just wanted to add on to the question that you had asked. And that is that when you show your prototype to someone, it's like bringing out your baby.
Yep.
And when it's all slimy and wet, people are like, it's your baby. You know, I know you love it, and I'll come to love it.
Yep.
But don't be afraid to show it to people who get what you're doing. But don't be discouraged by people who say, I don't get it. Listen to what they say.
Yep.
Understand if they can't get past that this cup is really supposed to have sparkle diamonds on it.
Yep.
And you're just showing them a plastic cup, that's not enough for them. Take that, thank them, and when you get closer to the sparkle diamonds, then bring it back to them. Keep them involved in the process, but don't be discouraged when they don't get it right away. So when our speaker said, talk to people who know about these kind of things, you don't want to get too far inside your own head, but you do need somebody who can say, oh no, I get it. You want plastic bottles that can collapse. You want this, or you want that. Oh, I get it. I get the direction you're going. And yes, I like this, or no, I don't. And then move on as you refine it, as you move forward and it gets closer and closer. Show it to people who are further and further away from what you had inside your head.
My best focus group person is my wife, because she has no idea what I talk about. Like, I'll explain something to her, she's lost. So everything goes through her, right? Whether it's classified information or not, right? because she'll say that she doesn't get it, and that's perfect. That's who I want my audience to be, because exactly as you said, they're going to tell me exactly what I'm missing, right? I've been staring at this for 6 months. I've been staring at this for a year and a half. Of course I know what it's supposed to do. My wife has no idea. The neighbor has no idea.
Time for one more question?
I think you said that you don't spend any of your money on prototypes.
When I'm working for another corporation, no. On my products, yes, I do. So I was using that as, this product here. So this one here was a beast. We failed in every way possible. But with that, we were first ones. So I was, there's an organization, National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. I was the first engineer at Essex to get a product certified through them. And we failed and failed and failed and failed. Like, every time we started a new prototype, we found a new flaw. We spent way too much on tooling way too early. So we had to find workarounds for that every time. So yeah, this is, to answer that, yeah, that was someone else's money that I messed up with.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things you prototyped that are your own?
So for me, so believe it or not, I started off fishing goods, right, sporting goods, moved into oxygen therapy devices, and then went into cut and sew. How in the world do you go from metals to fabrics and textiles is dumb, right? So that was my failure personally on my career path. But at the same time, here I am now, and my current products are all textile products. So I make a set of ballistic-proof handbags and various things like that. I think that the ballistic... What? No one. Yeah, so that's the honest truth. Right now, so my wife says that I have writer's block right now, because I do. I'm trying to find my next product that I want to do. I tell people I'm trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, and that's the honest to God truth. I've made handbags, I've made pillowcases, I've made money clips, I've made knives, I've made all these things, and I haven't found something that I'm just, this is it. I'm passionate about it. So I just keep going, right? I just keep prototyping. Exactly what I said. I just keep prototyping. I'll make another one. I'll come up with something new, and I'll make it. And that didn't work out. I really want to get into drones, right? I love aerospace. That'd be fun. I don't have the money to do that right now, but we'll see. We'll see what creative ideas I come up with. Right now, for me, it's exactly what I said. It's just doing it, right? Eventually, I'll come up with something. I'm afforded that with where I'm at, which is great. So when everyone leaves at night, I get to sneak over to the piece of equipment that no one's supposed to latch me on. Yeah, that's where I'm at. That's what I've made.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right.